Good Yontif to everyone, and Gemar Chatima Tova. May we all be inscribed for blessing and good health in the Book of Life in this new year, 5782. I'm Rabbi Jessica Graf, together with Cantor Toby Glaser, Rabbi Abby Phelps, who will join us on the bima in just a few minutes, our wonderful music director, Jonathan Dimmock, and our choir that fills our beautiful sanctuary with music and prayer. We welcome you here to Congregation Shereth Israel from wherever you happen to be. As I've been saying now for many, many months, hello out there. We form one community when we come together to pray and to observe these high holy days. We invite you to join with us from your homes. If you would like to use a machzor, the link to upload the flip page machzor came to you along with the link for tonight's service. If you would prefer just to listen and to hum along, we welcome that as well. We will begin our service with the lighting of our Yontif candles, and I would like to invite a very special person to the bima, my husband, our Rebbitzin, Dr. Jonathan Graf, who has been an incredible support, I think I can say, objectively and subjectively to our community over these last 18 months as we've worked so hard to build community and be together in safety and in network, in community. So tonight, as we honor you with the lighting of these candles, we thank you as well for all that you've done, not only for our community, but I thank you for all that you've done for me in getting through this pandemic and allowing us to be here tonight. We'll begin first with the reading of the blessings on page 9 in the Machzor.
Source of blessing, eternal our God, you fill the universe with majestic might, teaching us holiness through sacred obligations, giving us the mitzvah of bringing light on Yom Kippur. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Source of blessing, eternal our God, you fill the universe with majestic might, giving us life, upholding the life within us, and bringing us to this time.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של יום הכיפורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
We continue on page 16 with these beautiful words of Or Zarua. We turn to page 18 as we prepare ourselves to hear the haunting and beautiful Kol Nidre melody in just a few moments. All vows, resolves, and commitments, vows of abstinence and terms of obligation, sworn promises, and oaths of dedication that we promise and swear to God and take upon ourselves from this day of atonement until next day of atonement. May it find us well. We regret them, and for all of them we repent. Let all of them be discarded and forgiven, abolished and undone. They are not valid and they are not binding. Our vows shall not be vows, our resolves shall not be resolves, and our oaths, they shall not be oaths. We continue with Kol Nidre.
Esarei Vacharamei Vekoramei Vechiruei Vekinosei Ushvot Din Darna Hodeish Damana Odacharim na Vedasarna Nafshatana Miyom Kippurim Zah Har Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu Aleinu Letova Kol Hon Yehon Sharon Betelin umvotalin La sharirin velo kayamin Nidre na la nidre Vesarana la la sare Hashavatana la Shavat
What a privilege to hear these two beautiful renditions of Kol Nidre, first the instrumental with Jonathan Dimmock and Alex Kelly on cello, our congregant, and then Cantor Glaser singing a cappella. We continue at the top of page 19 as we prepare ourselves for the third rendition of Kol Nidre. Let our speech be pure and our promises sincere. Let our spoken words, every vow and every oath, be honest and well-intentioned. Let our words cause no pain, bring no harm, and never lead to shame, distrust, or fear. And if, after honest effort, we are unable to fulfill a promise, a vow, or an oath, may we be released from its obligation and forgiven for our failure. Let our speech be pure and our promises sincere. I'd like to invite Lindsay Bronig, the president of the congregation, now to hold a Torah as our community stands and we open the Ark for the final recitation of Kol Nidre.
Kol Nidre ve'esarei v'charamei ve'konamei ve'chinuyen ve'chinusa Oshuot, Oshuot. Din darna, Hodeish tabana, Hodeish
We remain standing and turn to page 20. All shall be forgiven. The entire community of Israel and the stranger who lives in their midst, for all have gone astray in error. We continue with the Baruch Hu on page 22. We continue on page 24 in the English. Blessed are you, Adonai, your great name fills the universe with majestic might. Your word creates twilight and dusk, as your wisdom opens the gates of night. Your discernment separates the changing seasons and causes the passage of time. The stars arrayed across the sky reveal your design. You roll out the cycle of darkness and light, shaping day and night. You sweep away day and carry the world into nightfall, setting apart day from nighttime. You are God of all we can perceive and all that is beyond our perception. Living eternal God, be our sovereign to the end of time.
Ma'avir yom u'mevi layla u'mavdil ben yom u'ben layla Adonai tzvaot shemo El chai v'kayam Tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv haravim.
We continue on page 26. Love beyond all space and time, your love enfolds your people, Yisrael. We receive it in your teaching, your gift of Torah, sacred obligations, discipline, and law. So let us speak these teachings when we lie down and rise up and find joy forever in your Torah and mitzvot. They are the very essence of our life, ours to ponder and study all our days. May we never lose or be unworthy of your love.
Yem chayenu ve'orech yameinu Uvahem nege yomam v'layla ve'avatcha al tasir mimeno le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו,
We continue on with the Ve'ahavta on page 30. Please be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha Hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'vetecha, uvlechtecha v'aderech, uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot bein einecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, Uvisharecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. We continue on page 38. We are Israel, a people of God, the giver of life who would not let our feet give way, the maker of miracles for us against Pharaoh, of signs and portents in the land of Egypt, the one who brought our people Israel from its midst to enduring freedom.
לפני משה ומרים זה לי אנו ואמרו ונאמר כי ודע אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
With Adonai Sephatai on page 46. Please rise.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Ha'gibor, ve'Hanora, El-Elyon, Gomer Chasadim, Tovim, ve'Konei Hakol, ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot ve'Imahot, מביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה, רב למושיע מוריד הטל. יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, נאמנת על החיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, בחיי הכל.
continue on page 62. Please be seated. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, our God and God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness, together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel. May we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of atonement. We continue on page 66.
Say Adonai Eloheinu be'amecha Yisrael o tefilatam be'ahava תמיד עבודת ישראל. ישראל עמך. אל קרוב לכאן, קורא פני אל עבדך וכוננו. שפוך את רוחך ותחזינה עינינו ושובך לציון.
In March 2020, as the pandemic was rolling out, things seemed a bit bleak. The best medicine for anxiety and confusion seemed to me to be a little laughter and something to focus our scattered minds on. So I sent out a note to the congregation with an article attached. This was the missive before my Friday morning missives were even a glimmer in my eye. I never meant to write a weekly missive. The Friday morning missives just happened. I had no intention of starting a tradition that would last 66 weeks. You see, we were all stuck at home, separated from each other and most of the world. I thought that I could send something that would cross the distance, that we'd all share, that would link us together, even as we were apart. I didn't know then how important it would be for us to remain connected and to strengthen our community through these weekly check-ins. So many of you emailed back and shared stories. It almost felt like we were out for coffee. Of course, we weren't. We were stuck at home. But soon I made an important discovery. I learned that the missives gave all of us a shared reference point and a sense of belonging. And so the Hello Out There missives were born. Each week, an article or two or three would jump out at me, usually something sort of silly or obscure, always something tangentially related to the pandemic experience we were all struggling to navigate. A few people didn't get it. I received a couple of emails saying things like, "Rabbi, you seem to be unaware of the fact that people are dying of this virus." No, I wasn't unaware of that at all. My husband is a doctor who has pretty much worked 7 days a week since February of 2020, when a mysterious illness kept bringing people to the hospital. For 18 months, he, our family by extension, has been exposed to the virus up close every single day. Last spring, we had 2 preschoolers who were suddenly at home with no school, playgrounds, or friends to keep them busy. So we had to invent activities in the house that would bring exercise, laughter, and entertainment to our long days. I am now an expert in the making of indoor obstacle courses. Like many of you, I'd venture out infrequently. Occasionally, I'd wait in line at the grocery store. When it was my turn, I'd run in and fill a cart to overflowing with whatever food I could reach. When I got home, I'd spend an hour trying to cram it all into our way too small freezer in the hopes that I wouldn't have to go back to the store too soon. At the end of a crazy day, I'd sit down to read the newspaper and see how other people were dealing with this pandemic. After 66 weeks of keeping an eye out for articles to write about in my Friday morning missives, I have to admit that I do read the newspaper a little differently now. Old habits are hard to break. Every time I find a slightly ridiculous article about something to do with the pandemic, with anxiety or coping or creativity, I still mark it. Where can I use this? I ask myself excitedly. I'm still drawn to articles that might make for fun reading in a missive. Imagine my excitement a few weeks ago when I found this one. The title captured my attention. Strawberry daiquiri, pumpkin spice. We tried these American hummus flavors so you don't have to. Yuck. I must admit that I always stop to glance at the dill pickle flavored hummus at Trader Joe's. But I am happy to report that I've never, ever bought one. But lo and behold, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency published this article, so now I wasn't just gawking at unappealing hummus flavors alone. Suddenly, I was in the company of readers all over the country who would see this article. The writers sampled and reported on all kinds of unusual flavors of hummus, including chocolate mint hummus, mango hummus, and cake batter hummus. Interesting, but what does this have to do with a global pandemic, you ask? I'll tell you, everything. You see, the last 18 months have been about surviving a pandemic together. We've had to find a way to share ideas and information, to keep ourselves busy, and to keep up our spirits. We've relied on each other to make it through, to get groceries, to go to doctor's appointments, and to laugh. We've shared articles and silly ideas as well as serious conversations, trying to understand the latest medical information. Through all of these things, we've been connected across distance. So an article on disgusting flavors of hummus, well, it's about connection, creativity, laughter, common vocabulary. You see, as we've been isolated, we've reached out to share things. And those ideas have woven a tapestry of connection. We've learned a lot of things in the last 18 months, but I think the most important of all of the important lessons is that we rely on each other for survival. We saw that community and the love and caring of people for each other are what allowed us to navigate these past 18 months. I've seen some extraordinary connections. People who put fear aside, wore masks and face shields, and took strangers in our community to their chemo appointments because they needed to go. People who stood at tables 6 feet apart every single week to prepare food for folks who were counting on those meals. People who called and reached out to other members of our community to check in and make sure they were okay. People showed up on Zoom for Shiva minions to support mourners. People came to the cemetery to bury a loved one, even during COVID, bravely filling a grave with earth and then helping roll the sod back on top because it was a labor of love. And the worse things felt out in the world, the more the support of people for each other mattered, the more community mattered, the more we checked in on each other, brought food, called, waved from across the street, sang out our windows, the clearer it was that human beings can and must take care of each other. But what does that have to do with pumpkin spice hummus? I'll tell you. The more we share, communicate, discuss ideas, the more common vocabulary we have to express our own experiences, and the more we live life together. That's the lesson of these last 18 months. We need each other to live. We rely on each other for survival. In our Torah reading for Yom Kippur, the words nearly leap off the parchment this year. Natati lifanecha habracha v'haklala hachaim v'hamavet. God says, I have set before you blessing and curse, life and death. I think we're all convinced that those words are true. The Torah continues, Bacharta b'chaim, choose life. In the midst of blessing and curse, life and death, an intense place we're now all familiar with, the Torah instructs us to choose life. That would be a powerful enough message for Yom Kippur, a reminder that life is worth living. But let's focus on the verses before this instruction, at the beginning of the Torah portion. Parshat Nitzavim starts, Atem Nitzavim hayom kulchem, lifnei Adonai Elohechem. You are all standing this day before Adonai, all of you, together. And then a list, the leaders of your tribes, your elders, and your officers, every man of Israel. Your young children, your women and your convert who is within your camp, your woodcutters and your water drawers together. To face blessing and curse, life and death. Choose life together so that you will all live. Every single person in the community is included. Every person counts. As you face blessing and curse, life and death, know that you face it together as one community. Engage in life with other people. We are all navigating that space between blessing and curse, life and death. The Torah screams out a truth we felt but hadn't quite articulated before the pandemic. We rely on each other for survival. A scholar of human history tells this story. The well-known anthropologist Margaret Mead was once asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of civilization in a culture. The student expected Mead to talk about fishhooks or clay pots or grinding stones. But Mead said that the first sign of civilization in an ancient culture was a femur, a thigh bone that had been broken and then healed. Mead explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you die. You cannot run from danger, get to the river for a drink, or hunt for food. You are meat for prowling beasts. No animal survives a broken leg long enough for the bone to heal. A broken femur that is healed is evidence that someone has taken time to stay with the one who fell, has bound up the wound, has carried the person to safety, and has tended the person through recovery. Helping someone else through difficulty is where civilization starts, Mead said. We've learned a lot in these last 18 months. The most important of all the important lessons is that we rely on each other for survival. We are inextricably linked to each other. This year, more than any other year in recent memory, the words of our Torah ring true. I have set before you blessing and curse, life and death. Choose life together. We are each called upon to ensure not only that we choose life, but that we choose life for the survival of each other. The Torah portion begins with the word atem, you, plural. You all stand here. But later on, the verbs are in the singular. I have put before you personally blessing and curse, life and death. Bacharta b'chaim, you as an individual will have to choose to value life for yourself and others. This pandemic has forced us into a time of reckoning. We must consider the impact of our actions on others. Do I care about what my actions do to you? And do you make choices to take care of me? As we watch a nation of people divided over masks and vaccines, these questions have become inescapable. In a famous line in the Talmud, we learn, Kol Yisrael aravim zeh bazeh. Every Jew is responsible for every other. The Talmud teaches us that if one Jew sees another Jew at the verge of sinning, he or she has an obligation to step in and help. Even more so, it implies an obligation on all Jews to ensure that other Jews are cared for in body and spirit. We learn from the Talmud that all Jewish people are considered guarantors for one another. Kol Yisrael aravim zeh bazeh. Every Jew is responsible for every other. This phrase is the basis of the notion of communal responsibility in Jewish law. Unlike in Talmudic times, we now live in a world where Jews and non-Jews interact all the time, where our community consists of a wonderfully diverse population. So by extension, this famous line from the Talmud, Kol Yisrael aravim zeh bazeh, encapsulates a universal moral imperative to take care of each other. But here we are living in a world where this moral imperative does not guide the actions of everyone. During this pandemic, we have seen people perform sacred and selfless acts to help others. We have also been witness to the basest and ugliest selfishness that humanity knows, a total disregard for other people's lives. It is sickening and true. We are living in a country where a good part of the population doesn't care about the well-being of others, where some political loyalty dictates that wearing masks for the protection of others somehow denies personal freedom. We all stop at red lights, don't we? We all take certain precautions so that other people can also live in freedom and good health. We rely on each other for survival. And we've learned from this pandemic that each of us directly impacts the well-being of others. In America, people like to shout about our personal freedoms, our constitutional right to do whatever it is that we feel like. I'm here to tell you that that is not at all a Jewish way of looking at the world. Yes, we all love personal freedoms, and yes, we American Jews are deeply proud of the American values that govern our democracy. But America is making a big mistake. I'll go so far as to say that America is not doing its job to protect her citizens. Allowing people to make the choice to endanger their fellow Americans' lives is downright un-American and un-Jewish. This malignant attitude is becoming more prevalent. People are running around with guns, shooting each other, and making work, school, and even the grocery store unsafe places to go. People are demanding their right to go into public spaces without masks on, flaunting their disregard for science, medicine, and their fellow human beings. We have arrived at a very low place in our society's moral conscience. It stems from a selfishness and a disrespect for human life, which is eroding our civilization. It is shrouded in false language about personal freedoms. Our Yom Kippur Torah portion, the one chosen by our rabbis for this holiest day of our year, teaches us this: the commandment to choose life for all of us belongs to each of us. Over the last 18 months, one of the quiet side stories of this pandemic has been the role Israel has played in the development and use of the vaccines. Israel has been on the forefront not only of research, but a model of understanding the impact of vaccinating the population. The world has looked to Israel to learn many things about how to navigate this pandemic. In many ways, Israel has been a leader in gathering data and advancing solutions. Why is that? Having spent a lot of time in Israel, I can imagine how an Israeli social norm, which can be quite frustrating at times, is also profoundly helpful during this pandemic. Years ago, I was standing on Emek Rephaim, a busy street running through the German colony in West Jerusalem. I was waiting for the bus. While I stood there, I decided to peel an orange and have a snack. My hands were full, so I put the orange peel down on top of a mailbox for a moment. From half a block away, a woman crossed the street diagonally, coming towards me. "You are planning to dispose of that orange peel, aren't you?" she asked sharply. I was planning to, but I wasn't even sure how to answer. I could hardly believe the scene. Wasn't it my problem to clean up the orange peel? My responsibility to decide what to do? A few days later, I was riding the bus on that same street. An old woman got up from her seat and walked several rows back on the bus. She stopped next to a young mother, seated next to an open window, holding a baby. From the conversation, I could tell that the two women didn't know each other. I heard the older woman say, "You need to put a sweater on that baby." What? I thought. Why doesn't she mind her own business? I didn't understand her motivation until much later. Judaism's instruction that we care for each other as if we were making choices for ourselves is foreign to Americans. In Israel, there is an underlying instruction that guides the people. Kol Yisrael aravim zeh bazeh. Every single Jew is responsible for every other one. Everyone is responsible for the well-being of everyone else. A personal feeling of responsibility informs the way people act. The commandment to choose life for all of us belongs to each of us. Several years after I lived in Jerusalem, I co-led an interfaith trip to Israel with a minister from Phoenix. It was particularly interesting for me to see Israel through the eyes of devout Christian visitors. One day, several people on the bus needed a pharmacy, so we made a group stop. I stood by, ready to help people translate and ask for medications. One of our Christian travelers wanted to get some kind of medicine and described her symptoms to the pharmacist. The pharmacist gave her the name of some tablets and pointed to the shelf where they should be, but the pharmacist could see that the shelf was empty. "Wait," she told the Christian lady from Arizona. "I'll be right back." The Israeli pharmacist returned a few minutes later holding her purse. It was a giant bag filled with everything. She dug and dug until she discovered a tiny packet at the bottom of her own purse. Triumphantly, she pulled unmarked pills out of her bag. "This is what you need," she declared, and handed them to the customer, who was dumbfounded. A pharmacist she didn't know pulled unmarked pills out of her personal bag and handed them over? She looked at me stunned. I smiled, because I totally understood that to an American, this was truly and utterly an incomprehensible act, even a frightening one. How could a stranger be trusted? But also I smiled because I understood that in a country where everyone behaves like your cousin, your friend, your bubby, this was a kind and generous thing to do. As I've been reading about Israel during the pandemic, I was reminded of these experiences I've had in Israel. Of course, the conversation in Israel about vaccines, public health, safety, and communal responsibility are informed by the words of our ancient guidebook for life, the Talmud. Kol Yisrael aravim zeh bazeh. Every single one of us is responsible for the behavior and well-being of every single other person. Why would Israel swiftly vaccinate all of their elderly? Because each of those citizens is someone's beloved grandmother, grandfather, great aunt, or uncle. In Israel, strangers are part of the family. The commandment to choose life for all of us belongs to each of us. What have we learned in the last 18 months? It will take us years to process all of this. But one thing is certain, we rely on each other for survival. Natati lefanecha habracha vehaklala, hachayim vehamavet, bacharta bechayim leman tichye ata v'zarecha. I have set before you blessing and curse, life and death. Choose life so that you and future generations will live. The commandment to choose life for all of us belongs to each of us. Ken yehi ratzon. May it be God's will.
We continue our service with the Vidui, our confessional service, which begins on page 82. Please rise. Our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence. And when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong.
Elohei avotenu, tavo lefanecha tefilatenu, ve'al titala מתחינתנו שאין אנחנו הזפנים וקשי עורף לומר לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו
Ashamnu,
בגדנו,
Bagadnu,
גזלנו,
Gazalnu,
דיברנו דופי,
Dibanu Dofi,
אבינו,
Evinu,
והרשנו,
Vehirshanu,
Ashanu, Tsararnu, Kishinu Oref, Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tayinu, Titanu,
We continue on page 86.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזדון ובשגגה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדיבור פה, the ways we have wronged you deliberately and by mistake, and harm we have caused in your world through the words of our mouths.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בטיפשות פה, the ways we have wronged you by hardening our hearts, and harm we have caused in your world through careless speech.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכחש ובכזב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ברכילות. The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בפליאות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזלזול הורים ומורים. The ways we have wronged you by judging others unfairly, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בווידוי פה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהונאת רע. The ways we have wronged you through insincere apologies, and harm we have caused in your world by mistreating a friend or neighbor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחוזק יד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במשא ובמתן. The ways we have wronged you through violence and abuse, and harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty in business.
ועל כולם אלוהי סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement.
We continue on page 86. We sin against you when we hurt one another. For our failures of love, Adonai, we seek forgiveness. For exploiting another for our own pleasure, and for the wounds we cause through betrayal and deception, for withholding affection from those we claim to love, and for using love to control our spouses and partners, our children and parents, for abandoning friends and siblings whose love has sustained us, and for neglecting those who love us when they need us most, for harboring in our relationships mistrust, boredom, and disloyalty, and for rejecting our partner's efforts at repair and renewal, for possessiveness, jealousy, and avarice, and for lashing out in anger at those who are closest to us.
Page 91. Who among us is blameless? Who shall say, I have not erred, I have not wronged or sinned? We abuse, we brutalize, we covet, we deceive, we enslave, we feud, we gossip, we humiliate, we injure, we judge unfairly. We kill, we lie, we manipulate, we neglect, we ostracize, we plagiarize, we quarrel, we rage, we shame, we turn away. We undermine, we vilify, we waste, we exploit the earth, we yearn too much for yesterday and too easily forget Zion. Our sins are an alphabet of woe. Help us, Holy One, to follow your ways of integrity, justice, and love. Teach us to seek forgiveness with humility and an open heart. For all these wrongs, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement. We continue on page 96. Please be seated. At the bottom of the page, may there be refuge when night surrounds us. At sunrise, safe haven for your sake. All day our words rise from a sea of sorrow, and they break in waves of atonement till evening comes. Page 97, may our yearnings rise above the shadows of dusk. May the searching of our souls reach you in the morning. All day our praise is before you. May it be acceptable. May it be received till evening comes. Page 98. Hear our call, Adonai, our God. Show us compassion. Accept our prayer with love and goodwill. With hope, Adonai, we await you. Surely you, Adonai, our God, you will answer.
וקבל ברחמים, ברחמים,
It is my privilege to invite Lindsay Bronig, President of our Board of Trustees, to address the congregation on this sacred evening of Kol Nidre. It is traditional to hear a bit about the congregation and about our year, which comes to an end, from the President on this sacred evening as we gather together to contemplate the year past and the year ahead.
Shana Tova. What a roller coaster of a year. Remember all those holiday cards marking the end of 2020 that said, well, that was a crazy year, like it was all in the rearview mirror? We all thought, or at least hoped, that 2021 would be a new beginning. And in some ways it has been. 80% of eligible San Franciscans are vaccinated. We have access to PCR tests and rapid tests, and kids are back in school, thank goodness. And yet, we are back online for high holidays, back to masking all the time, and back to that pervasive, low-level anxiety. It's exhausting. I'm just glad we have each other. Our membership committee recently conducted an online survey of our membership. Among the many things we learned from this survey, the one I thought was most powerful was that a majority of our congregants said that their relationship to the synagogue has been strengthened during the course of the pandemic. That's extraordinary and a real testament to the community here. Many factors go into why members feel such a strong connection. Probably the most important is the comfort people have gotten from our weekly Shabbat services. For many, many months, these services were exclusively over Zoom, an imperfect substitution for in-person worship, but the glimpses into people's homes, of their homemade halot, and just seeing people's unmasked faces week in and week out had its own intimacy and brought happiness and a much-needed sense of normalcy to many of us. When we returned to in-person services in June, that was its own joy. Sitting in the pews, hearing people clap along to Cantor Toby's music, feeling the energy in the room, and seeing the huge smiles in people's eyes, if not on their lips. It was enough to make it worth it to drive across town and find parking. While we have briefly returned to having services exclusively online, our plan is to go back to in-person services starting next week, with an online option, of course. It's wonderful that we are getting such a positive response to services, whether they are only over Zoom or both online and in person. Our congregants are getting the spirituality and connection that they need in these tough times. And that's such a tribute to our amazing clergy team and also to each of you who show up on Friday night in whatever modality suits you. Congregants have also really appreciated our Wednesday afternoon programs on Zoom. Educational opportunities that initially focused on the pandemic and then expanded to include civic engagement topics, such as interviews with elected officials like Chesa Boudin and Scott Wiener, as well as opportunities to discuss important legislation like California's time served bill. We have been so lucky to have the opportunity to learn about the nuances of this pandemic through trusted medical professionals in our community, and to talk about important matters of public policy with the benefit of a Jewish lens on the topics. As long as the pandemic is posing new challenges, We will continue looking for opportunities to bring you reliable information about those challenges through our Frontline series. And this year, we are planning to really lean into educational opportunities on matters of public policy and legislation. We think that one of the great services we can offer congregants is help thinking through knotty issues, cutting through the noise, and layering on a Jewish perspective. Please check under the dome and read the monthly Community Connections for information on upcoming educational programming. I'm very proud to share that another connection point that congregants celebrated is our affinity groups. We launched these affinity groups in the spring, and the first round of groups ran from March through August. About half of those affinity groups are continuing, and we are launching a new round in October, just a few weeks from now. This next round will include a hiking group, a jazz lovers group, a journaling group, a group for single parents, a camera club, a wine tasting group, a modern and contemporary art group, a group that will bake cookies for Hamotzi, and a group that will focus on local professional sports teams. Something for everyone. Affinity groups are wonderful opportunities for congregants with common interests to come together and get to know each other. The goal of these groups is for people to feel more connected to each other and therefore to the synagogue community. To have greater confidence that when one shows up for a synagogue event, there will be a familiar face in the crowd. To have one more roster of friends who can be called upon in times of need. I lead a Peloton group that includes women from their 30s through their 60s. It is a mix of people who knew each other before the group started and some who had never known each other before we started our affinity group. Our conversations, we talk over Zoom and then ride, range from Peloton-focused to Israeli politics to puppy advice. I hope you'll all consider signing up for this new round of affinity groups. You can expect an email with sign-up information around the end of the month. Each time I attend a synagogue event, I'm reminded of the abiding affection that this community has for each other. We really like each other, and we are truly happy to see each other, whether on the screen or in person. One of the things that many of us value most highly about being part of Shereth Israel is that feeling of belonging, like in the show Cheers. For many of us, it feels like a place where everyone knows your name. However, this isn't true for everyone, not for people who are new, and not for other people who, for whatever reason, haven't felt the community's embrace. To try to ensure that we are including everyone in our welcoming umbrella, we created a new committee this year, the Inclusion Committee. The Inclusion Committee is working to raise awareness about the ways, both small and large, that we can make everyone feel like they belong here. These include educating our greeters in the building about offering the elevator and not just the stairs as a way to get to the sanctuary, and giving information about all the possible bathroom choices. In other words, not making assumptions about a person's identity or ability. In addition, this year the Inclusion Committee is focusing on race, and more specifically, Jews of color. This means working to shift our assumptions about what a Jewish person looks like, and also raising awareness about how often Jews of color experience racism in a Jewish context, and learning how to be part of the solution. Last month, only a few days after a board presentation about this very topic, my 7-year-old daughter asked me about something she had heard from a classmate in school. "Mommy, is it true that all Jews are white?" Because of the conversation we'd had at the board meeting, I was prepared to give her a thoughtful and well-informed answer, and was more convinced than ever of the importance of the work of the Inclusion Committee. With this work, we can get closer and closer to our ideal of ensuring everyone within this community has a true sense of belonging. This is my last Kol Nidre speech as president. I still have a full 8 months as president, not that I'm keeping track, but I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for being such an extraordinary congregation to lead. The grace and encouragement that you all have given each other, our clergy, our staff, and me during these past 2 years of transition and pandemic remind me often of how lucky I am to be part of this synagogue. Thank you for all the smiles and kind words. Thank you for rolling with all the ups and downs. And thank you for continuing to be generous donors and therefore making it possible for us to keep doing everything we do. I think I said this last year, but this time I'll say it with more conviction. Next year in the sanctuary, Shana Tova.
Thank you, Lindsay. We turn now to page 100. God of forgiveness, we come before you in need of compassion. At Sinai, you spoke words that guide our lives to this day, but our ancestors lost faith in you, lost hope in their Redeemer. With one voice, they had promised, "We will do and obey," and yet, stiff-necked, they broke their word, adoring an idol of gold. How wondrous your compassion in the face of their rebellion, your forgiveness in that moment of human weakness and doubt. We too have broken promises to you. We too worship the work of our own hands. We too make of a gold a god. And we too forsake your word. At Sinai, you revealed 13 attributes of mercy. These aspects of your nature, your very essence, we now recall.
Adonai, Adonai, Erachom v'chanun, Erech apayim v'rav chesed v'emet, Notzer chesed la'alafim, Nosei avon v'afasha,
We continue with Avinu Malkeinu on page 114. We invite you to please rise.
It is our great joy to invite our wonderful Cantor Emeritus, Cantor Martin Feldman, to the bima to help us finish this blessing.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu Ve'al Olaleinu V'tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our families.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Dever V'cherev V'ra'av Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Kol Tsar Umastin Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror.
Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu B'Sefer Chayim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu, Male Yadenu Mibir Chotecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings.
Avinu Malkeinu, harem keren mishchecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption. Avinu Malkeinu, na'al tashivenu reika milfanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, do not turn us away from you with nothing.
Avinu Malkeinu, kabel berachamim uvratzon et tfilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace it.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh imanu leman shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, act toward us as befits your name.
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh lemancha, im lo lema'anenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake, if not for ours.
Avinu Malkeinu, ein lanu melech ela ata.
Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign.
Avinu Malkeinu, petach sha'arei shamayim letfilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu, shema kolenu, chus v'rachem aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, treat us with tender compassion.
Avinu Malkeinu, chanenu ve'anenu, ki ein banu ma'asim, aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Kabol aleinu. Ve'alol aleinu, ve'tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu, Besefer Chaim Tobi. Avinu Malkeinu, Kodesh aleinu. Kodesh aleinu, Shalom Tovah. Avinu Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu, Shema Kolenu,
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Honenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim. Asei Imanu, Daka Chesed. Asei Imanu, Daka Chesed, Ve'Hoshienu. Asei Imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed. Asei imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshiachenu. Avinu malkeinu. Avinu malkeinu. Avinu malkeinu, Honenu, Honenu, Yem Banu Ma'asim.
Thank you, Cantor Feldman. We remain standing and continue with Aleinu on page 116.
עלינו לשבח לדוד הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא עשנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגמור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד
We remain standing and turn to page 121. Our thoughts turn to loved ones whom death has taken from us in recent days and those who died at this season in years past. Our hearts open as well to the wider circles of loss in our community and wherever grief touches the human family. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing in this new year and always. Kaddish Yatom is on page 122. Yitgadal ve'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha brichu. Le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Usei shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru. Amen. May the source of peace bestow peace on all who mourn and may we be a source of comfort to all who are bereaved. Amen. Please be seated. A few announcements on this Kol Nidre to tell you what will be happening in our community tomorrow. I invite Gordon Gladstone, our executive director, to the bima.
Erev Tov, good evening. Just a few announcements going into tomorrow. Services tomorrow morning will start at 10 a.m. We hope you will join us. The links, of course, are in the same email that brought you here this evening. The afternoon offerings, including our social action program, will be at 1 p.m. The healing service, which I highly encourage you to join us for, will be at 2:30. The afternoon mincha service is at 3:30, not 3 o'clock as the email says, rather 3:30. That's 3:30. Yisker and Neela will begin at 5 p.m. There are a number of programs going into next week, but I'm going to save those and tell you about them tomorrow, so you have to come back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Return to page 96 as we conclude our service tonight with Ya'aleh. Gamar Chatima Tova, may we all be inscribed for blessing in the book of life.
Gamar Chatima Tova.